Welcome to the 100 Authors in 100 Days show, where I get to interview amazing people. And today, where we actually get to interview authors and we get to hear the story behind the story. And today, I have with me an amazing writer, author, speaker, and founder and CEO of Me Tyme. And she is also one of the co-authors for our Latinas 100 project, 100 book that's being published in December 19th. Her name is Remy Meraz. And welcome, Remy. How are you?
I am well. I am so excited to be here with you.
Yes, I'm excited that you're here with me. I know we've chatted in the past and we've gone back and forth with your story. I love the story that you've submitted for the book, by the way. And I also love the title that you chose, The Art
Yeah,
of Acceptance.
it's big, right? Acceptance.
Yes, I really like it.
Thank you.
So I met you, I just want to share with the audience, I met you at a conference in San Diego. It was a public speaking conference, and we kind of connected briefly, and then we stayed in touch on Facebook. And then I saw you. It's kind of weird how we connect on Facebook. We never like pick up the phone to call that person, but we're always connecting through the likes, through the pictures. And one thing that I noticed about you is that you were doing a lot of work with your company, Me Tyme. Can you share a little bit more about what that is and share about what the company is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Me Tyme, and it's spelled time with a Y.
Mm-hmm.
But Me Tyme is a behavioral health platform that's designed to help people improve resilience, happiness, and productivity in both their personal life and their work life. We're on a mission to help people think, feel, and work better. And we do this through what we call snackable video content, micro learning content that features therapists and life coaches, storytellers, people who've already overcome a challenge that a user might have, and some experiential exercises. And so think of us like a Netflix for emotional health, but with interactive capabilities.
Ooh, I love it. I love this micro learning idea.
Yes, because we're all so busy and overwhelmed and doing too much, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody has very short attention spans,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we really wanted to provide a tool that people, when they're stuck or going through a challenge, could uh, use Me Tyme as that tool to help them get unstuck from whatever they're going through in the moment. Because, when it's happening, if you're arguing with your coworker or your spouse and
Mm-hmm.
you're in that moment and you're like, and I wish I could talk to somebody, but you can't talk to somebody or you can't get professional help, you know, you have Me Tyme there to give you some advice that you might need to help you through that situation.
Ooh, I love it. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Well, I noticed that in your story, one of the reasons why I really like it is because well, number one, you're a great writer. Number two, you start with this story of um, talking to your daughter. So I'm going to read the first couple of sentences, if that's
Sure.
okay with you. You said in the beginning, you start with getting diagnosed with ADHD was one of the saddest and happiest days of my life. But first, let's talk about what led to my diagnosis. One day, my daughter came to me and said, "Mom, I'm really worried about you." And then you say, "Why?" She says, "When I leave for college, who's going to help you find your keys, sunglasses, and phone?" I laughed, but she did it. She didn't. She was dead serious. And that's
100.
how you start your essay. And I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. And then I'm not going to read the whole story for the viewers because I want you to go on her link and then buy the book if she decides to sell the book on her site, right? But you go on to talk about this day where you were diagnosed with HDHD. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, ADHD,
ADHD.
ADHD, and it's no longer, it used to be ADD. They
Mm-hmm.
used to have ADD and ADHD, and now it's just ADHD. It's
Oh,
one thing.
why
And
did it change? Why does it? Because yeah. I
Yeah,
remember ADD. She's yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember off the top, but why it changed. But before it was ADD. ADHD is with the hyper part of it. The other one is just attention deficit disorder, and then the other one is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So it's with the hyperactivity part of it, and yeah, now they just call it ADHD. But that diagnosis, was a game changer for me because I had never understood why I did certain things the way I did them. And there tends to be a lot of shame and self-loathing and beating yourself up. And, I was super great at certain things, and then I just really sucked at other things and other things that people could do easily. And so there were, many instances, throughout my life where people would tease me
Mm.
or bosses would get upset with me or, question me about things I was doing. And, I was like, you want to change, I didn't know how. Like I wanted to fix whatever it was, but my brain could not do it.
Is it
And
something
so,
that you had your whole life, or is it something that like it developed when you were later on in life, or how does?
no, I actually did have it my whole life. And so I grew up in some trauma, drama, and dysfunction, like many people, around the
Like,
world have. And
mhm,
I, it was a result of the trauma. And so what happens with folks who experience trauma and don't get help for it, professional help, you often develop disorders
mhm,
or addictions. And so, and usually it goes hand in hand with something else. So I was actually diagnosed with chronic anxiety first,
mm,
and then a year later, the ADHD. And so that's just very typical for folks. And I actually learned that watching an episode of Oprah when I was
wow,
a young girl, a teenager, and I just didn't know I had these disorders. I got diagnosed in my 30s
right,
with
yeah.
the disorders, right? So
I
what
was reading in here. You mentioned that in the essay. So
mhm.
you said when you were, and I don't want to interrupt you, but you said that you were diagnosed at 37.
Yeah, 37 with the ADHD, and the anxiety was, like I said, a year or two before. But the the diagnosis with the anxiety, they told me I was going to have to be on medication for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why would I want to do that? And so, I said, what if I don't want to? And the doctor said, well, you can go work with a cognitive behavioral therapist and they'll help you rewire your brain. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, I'm going to go do that. That sounds fun. And so I did. But back to the Oprah story. I was watching an episode of Oprah, and she was addressing her own trauma that she experienced, her sexual abuse. And she had a therapist psychologist on the show who talked about
Mm-hmm.
what happens to boys and girls who do not get diagnosed for trauma, drama, or dysfunction, and how they will develop disorders, addictions, and they will repeat the cycle of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so the generational cycle of behavior that of what happened to them, and pass, and things will happen. I mean, they'll pass it on to their children as well. Like, and so the response, from the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that was a big aha moment, um, because I at the time was in an abusive relationship, and it made me realize that everything I was doing was basically textbook, and that I could learn how to get out of it.
Mm. That's
And so then that took me about a year to get out of that relationship, but it was that aha moment, right, of hearing the therapist give that advice, which is part of the reason that led me to building Me Tyme. that if
Mhm.
I could kind of recreate that moment for other people, for the masses, right? To get that experience, because there's so much stigma around mental health,
Yeah.
therapy. Look, not even getting help for your problems, but especially in, communities of color,
Yeah.
with Latinos, with African Americans, with Asians, everybody, right? That
Yeah.
there's
Nobody
stigma.
wants to talk about it.
We don't talk about it. We don't talk about our problems. So that's the first step, let alone acknowledging it so then you can go get the help. And so I wanted to create, a platform that would allow folks to have access to the same type of teachings and learnings that I got through therapy, through coaching, through workshops and trainings.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, the diagnosis was very empowering for me,
Mm-hmm.
because once I had knowledge, you can have the knowledge, then I could take action.
Yeah, I really like what you wrote. What you wrote about that when you said the diagnosis was liberating, and then there's a section in here where you say releasing shame allows me to show up empowered versus a victim.
Hmm.
I love that, and it's so it's so true. And then not only did you, well, so how long did it take you to rewire your brain? Like how long was that whole therapy?
Look, it's a constant process, right? But I will tell you that I got off of the anxiety medication in 3 years, and it took me 11 years to get off the ADHD medication.
Wow.
And that was not just the therapy piece, but it was actually, um, putting new tools in my mental and emotional toolbox, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's learning mindfulness practices. It's creating systems and processes to so I don't lose my keys, right? And
Right,
my
right.
phone, right? And medication just gives you, at least the ADHD medication only gave me like 6 to 8 hours of the day,
Mm,
right? So you still have 20, 18 hours to work with to get through the day. So you
wow.
have to implement the new systems and processes to help you. And ADHD does not go away, right? I would say that if I were to test now, that it would be a much lower score than what I originally got, which, by the way, was pretty much the highest score you could get. And so I was off the charts, right?
Yeah.
So now, it's a constant process, and I think that what people don't understand, when we have challenges in our life, like, challenges don't go away, right? There's always change.
Yep.
Something's always coming at you. You're all, you get triggered. It's really about now, first understanding that you have the choice,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have power in choice, and you get to choose how you're going to handle situations. And when you put more, um, when you learn new skills and put new tools in your toolbox, right? Then you learn to handle things differently. For me, I just wanted to have emotional freedom,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, and there's different things that go into creating that. But for me, my brain always felt so chaotic that I just wanted peace and quiet
Mm-hmm.
in my brain, and then to have emotional freedom.
I can't even imagine how that must feel like because you had that, like that chaos going on for 37 years.
Hmm.
That I can't even imagine that. I don't know if I shared with you, but I struggled with severe anxiety, and I didn't even know that it was that what it was. I just would
Exactly.
feel this pain in my chest, and then I couldn't breathe, and then the tip of my fingers were like tingly, and I would go numb, and that the day that I found out, I was in my, I think it was like I was 29, I think, and it was because when I went to the ER because I thought I was having a heart attack, she told me, "No, you're having an anxiety panic attack," and I didn't even know what that was. I said, "What is that? And can you give me a pill because I got to go to work tomorrow?" And she's like, "No, it doesn't work that way." And she tried to explain to me, but I was under so much, like, So I know that it's different than the ADHD, but I just remember similar to you, where I had no idea what it was. Like it wasn't even a thing, you know. And then
Right.
realizing that I needed to that episode made me leave my corporate career at that moment,
Hmm.
because that career was driving me. I mean, I was killing myself is what I was
Right.
doing. 'Cause,
Right. So what I like to say with the anxiety, the way I describe it, because anxiety you typically will feel in your gut, your stomach, right, for the most part, and at least that's where it was for me. And for you, you're saying you felt it in the chest, and that's probably because you're having anxiety attacks, right? But that I call it the butterflies on steroids feeling.
yeah,
It's just constant nervousness, but times 100. And
yeah.
then so imagine I had that going on in my stomach, and then my brain is going 1,000 miles an hour.
Oh, can't even imagine.
Yeah, so my whole life, that's what it was. What I didn't know, so by the way, ADHD is typically goes undiagnosed in girls.
Oh, wow.
And the thing that helped a lot. I was an athlete growing up, and well, I still am, but
Mhm.
I, was played sports consistently. Obviously, as an adult, you're not getting that same outlet unless you create a workout plan. And when we get busy, we tend to not work out, right? But the exercise is number one
Mm.
to expend the energy, the extra energy that you have. So
I
that's
always see you running marathons.
um I haven't done a marathon yet. I run a lot, and I've done a couple of half marathons.
Yeah, like don't you do the 5Ks? Because whenever I see you
I
on Facebook, you're running.
So I just got back into running in
Oh,
in the last year,
mm,
and I've always been consistent with the working out. When I hit my 40s, I fell off the wagon, and I was married, and I had a crazy job, and I was traveling all the time, and so the working out just wasn't a priority for me, and I just reincorporated that back into my life a year ago. And I think you were following my journey. I had gained 20 pounds,
mm,
and I I didn't like the way I felt and looked, and I was doing I do all this mindfulness and mental and emotional work, but I wasn't taking care of the physical work. And then it's like you're going 5 steps forward, but taking 3 steps back, because I would be on stage speaking, but I'm wearing baggy clothes and trying to hide behind a podium, right? So I'm like really confident in who I am and love who I am and accept who I am, but then yet, on the mental and emotional stuff and the mindset work, but on the physical, as I'm gaining weight, I'm like, oh, trying to hide.
mm,
So
mm.
I decided to work out every day for 30 days, and then I hit 60 days, and then I decided why not do it for a year, and just challenged myself. And so I worked out every single day for a year. And
Wow.
that's when I incorporated the running back into the the game plan. And
Wow. That's
yeah,
impressive.
I actually made it to 390 days, and then I got hit by a car while I was on my bike. So I lost my streak, but I just recently finished physical therapy, and so now I've dialed it down to like 20%, and so now I can pick it back up because I'm done
Did
with
you,
it.
so you ran 390 days?
I didn't run for 390 days. I worked out every day for 390 days. And I'm not talking hardcore working out.
Yeah, but you
But
were, yeah, doing the thing. Yeah.
yeah, it was just about moving every day. It could be go for a walk. At a minimum, it would be 15 minutes of abs while watching TV. But no, not every day was hardcore, but it was just about getting back into the mix. And I lost 18 of my 20 pounds.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I admire you. I need to
Thank
do
you.
that. But I agree, because you can't there has to be a balance, right? You can be all gun ho mindfulness and do the work and do the mind work and all that. But then the physical body also has to be strong.
Well, your physical body the is the house of
Hmm.
your soul,
Yeah.
right? Your body houses is the temple for your
Yeah.
soul and your spirit.
Oh,
So
I
if
love
you're
that.
taking care of all of that, but not taking care of the house, right?
Mm.
The temple, then you're out of alignment. And the key
Yeah.
is to get into alignment, mind, body, spirit, soul.
I
And
love that.
when you're in alignment, that's when magical things start happening for you.
I love it. I love it. So what year was it that you started Me Tyme?
We started Me Time 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been on this, wild entrepreneurial journey. I quit corporate America, and it was actually I shouldn't say corporate America because it was a tech startup in the clean tech space, but it was, they were 10 years in, 400 employees. So by all accounts, I think in the US, a small business is anything less than 500 employees. But yeah, I just decided that I'd come up with the idea, and the company shut down and they laid everybody off. And it was I had to do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I had other ideas before, and I didn't go for them or try to make them come to life because I didn't have the confidence to
Mm-hmm.
do it. I kept focusing on what I wasn't good at or what I didn't know instead of what I am good at,
Mm.
what I do know. And so I broke through that entrepreneurial fear. I had a breakthrough around that. And and once I broke through the entrepreneurial fear, then the idea came to me literally the next day. So it's almost like I had to rid the fear out of my mind in order to make space for the idea. And
Wow.
the idea came to me, and I just said, I'm gonna do this. Like it's now or never.
Mm-hmm. How
And
what happened? Like, what did you do exactly to get rid of that stuff to let in the good idea come in? Like, was it something that you did physically? Was it something that you just put intention behind, or what
no,
was it?
no, I was in a training, a personal development training program,
Oh.
and that I had signed up for, and it was a 2-year program.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had dropped out of college when I had my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I looked at it like, oh, this is my college,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So I invested in this program, and it was 2 years, and I was in one of the courses, and there was a speaker, and he said, how many of you would like to speak from the stage one day?
Mm-hmm.
And I raised my hand, and he said, okay, all of you who raise your hand, stay during the lunch break. And so I stayed, and he said, okay, to speak from a stage and make money at it, you have to be an expert at something. How many of you are an expert at something? And so I raised my hand. And at the time, I was working for this other company, right? And I
Yeah.
raised my hand because I was like, oh, I'm an expert now at fuel cell technology. And then he said, and how many of you are selling a product right now in front of people? Right. And I'm like, oh, me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, and what was the third question? He asked, oh, yeah, does your product have mass appeal? And I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't raise my hand
Mm-hmm.
because fuel cells didn't have mass appeal. And and then he said, you have to be able to hit all three of those. And in that moment, I realized that I was an expert for somebody else's product.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Right. And I was in sales, and I was making them millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had went into this like 2 seconds of negative self-talk, because then it was like, oh, wait, well, what am I an expert at? And I went into like, oh, well, you didn't graduate from college, so you're not an expert at, because you don't have a degree. And then I
Mm-hmm.
went, wait a minute, you've been in sales and marketing for 20 years, and you have life experiences, and you're an expert at your life, and it's your life experiences that got you where you are. So I had this whole train of thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, Remy, you're an expert at your life. Right. And then I had like, oh my God, I've been making them millions of dollars. And a lot of people, are afraid of sales.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why wouldn't you make millions of dollars for yourself? That's something you are, like or whatever. And
Yeah.
so an hour later, I got a call from a client and he actually chewed me out, like totally ripped me a new one. And he was upset and about something that I had been telling my bosses for months that we needed to address or was going to come back and bite us in the rear end.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what was happening. And so I went back in the room and I was like mad and I was like, that's it. Like I want to be my own CEO. And I was like, and then I was like, that's, and it was just like declaring, I don't want to have to depend on other people to do their jobs in order for me to do my job well.
Mm.
I want to be a CEO. I want to have my own company. So it's a combination of those two things happening literally within hours of each other that where I broke through the fear.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
And it was like within that group, right, of someone of having to pay someone to coach you through it, because like you said, you invested this money in this program, like that was your college pretty much. And
Yeah.
it was like that scenario or that those circumstances where you're hearing people who have been there, who have done that, and now the questions are popping up. And do you think that would have had a breakthrough had you not been in this program?
And it's interesting because it wasn't even that anybody was coaching me, right? It was just the circumstances were happening,
Mm.
right? And I was having the breakthroughs.
Hmm.
And so I I I I don't know. That's a great question. I know it happened in that moment and I feel like it happened because it was supposed to, right? In that moment. I've
Uh-huh.
always been entrepreneurial, and so I don't know. I don't know that I can say, I've broken through the fear. That's what led that circumstance led for me, to do it.
Wow, that's really powerful. I love that because we all have those moments, and just like you, I made millions of dollars from our former employer,
Hmm.
yeah, employer, and millions. Like I was with them for 7 years, and it was like the highest paid, but I was also bringing in a lot of moolah, and so I had a moment where I was like, I'm working 16-hour days sometimes. And I'm like, why wouldn't I do it for myself? And also I had a similar revelation like you, where it was, hey, I'm an expert at me. I'm an expert at just like you, sales and marketing. I'm a huge expert in that area because I've been doing it for so long. Um, and we all have these moments. I can't even imagine like making that decision and also knowing struggling with the ADHD in this, because at that moment when you had that breakthrough, were you off the meds or were you still working through
No,
that?
I was at the tail end though.
Mm-hmm.
So it like a year later, year or two later is when I got off the meds.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it was, yeah, I think, too, like the great thing, you see my shirt, I made a shirt out of it. ADHD is my superpower, right?
Yeah, I
And
love it.
once I learned all of the ins and outs of ADHD and like there's really great strengths,
Mm-hmm.
that come from having ADHD. And so when I focused on that part of it and I make it work for me, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in as a businesswoman, as an entrepreneur. And I participated in an ADHD study recently on
Oh,
entrepreneurs. Most, I believe it's like 90, I want to say 99, but 90 something percent of CEOs and entrepreneurs have ADHD.
wow.
It's
I'm gonna
really,
have to go get tested, girl.
yeah, it's really high. And there's it's like when you learn how to soar with your strengths, and then whereas I said before in the past, I used to focus on my weaknesses,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's why I didn't take certain ideas, to fruition. But it's you hire or delegate for the things that you're not great at.
Yeah, I love
And
that. Hire and delegate. So what is your superpower? How have you funneled this energy into being your superpower? What is it?
so obviously the energy part is a big piece. So that gives me the endurance,
Mm,
go and do a lot. And I don't require a lot of sleep. I never have, like my whole life. I've always, operated on like 6 hours. I can operate on 4 to 6 hours. Not four is not great, but
uh-huh.
I don't need a lot of sleep.
Oh, lucky
I have
you,
a
girl.
lot of energy.
Hmm.
And, but the other big piece of it that's really important for a leader is I'm visionary. I'm
Mm.
very visionary. And so I can see things, far out. And obviously you need that skill set to lead a company, to build a company. And,
Yeah.
and
Usually the CEOs I know are forward thinking.
right,
They're already like 10 steps ahead. So like
exactly.
the average employee would be like, what are we going to do tomorrow? Or, let's think about next month and the employee meeting. But a CEO is already like 5 years, 10 years
5 years from now,
out.
5 years, 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always use the hashtag keep up.
Yeah. And then there are big ideas, right? Because I know you have massive
Big idea.
ideas. At some of your posts, I was watching you like do the training where it was like you were doing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but some type of like CEO training or something where you were like either you were going after VC money or you were like launching big time. And so whenever I would see any of your things, it was like big time. It wasn't like small things. It was like you're wheeling and dealing big time. That's what
Well,
I know about you.
yeah, so I've been in an accelerator programs, that I've gotten accepted into, and accelerator programs are like business school on steroids.
Yeah.
And what we're building is not small, right? We've been bootstrapping it. We've raised a little bit of money, but we haven't raised a big seed round yet.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple, challenges that go into that, just
Mm-hmm.
being a woman and being Latina,
Yeah.
uh, that play into that as well. But, we have to hit certain milestones and to get that. But
Yep.
the like what we're building, like as I described it, think of us as a Netflix for emotional health.
I love it.
I mean, look how big Netflix is, right? I mean, we need venture capital
Mm-hmm.
to build and scale something that's global.
Yeah, I love the fact that you're in the game though. Like I've never been in that game. Like I'm a solopreneur slash I hire, sometimes fire, but everything is contracted work. So
Mhm.
when I see you and when I see like the things that you've done, I'm like, oh, she's in the game, right? She's going after the money and talking to VCs and angel investors, and it's like I'm a Silicon Valley girl, so I know that world. You
Yeah.
know, I've never like pursued it because my ambitions are different. But like when I see your work, and I'm like, not only is she Latina, not only is she like I say like totally badass, but you're in the game. Like you're in the game. How many Latinas can say that? It's just not many. I can count them in one hand.
When we get that VC check, then we'll have a different conversation. But let's keep it real. It's
Yeah.
not easy. The venture capital is huge, but less than, I think it's 4% of women get venture capital.
Wow.
And for Latina and African American women, uh, tech founders, startup founders, we get less than 0.5%.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
the odds are not in my favor at all in the venture world. And, I have to be very, very careful about going down the rabbit hole when I see other startup founders and raising money and or where they're at. And, you know, we've been at it longer, and it's taking us longer. But you can't compare yourself to other people. Comparison is the number one killer for folks,
Mm-hmm.
right? You compare, that's immediately going to lower your vibration. You're going to be depressed, anxious, sad, frustrated, all of those things. And I can't afford to be in those emotions, right?
Yeah.
And and it's it's where the game is at right now. And we got to change the game. We have to create more, um, get more people of color investing in us, right?
Absolutely.
In
Absolutely.
our own communities.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough. It's not easy. And look, I've thought about quitting a gazillion times,
Hmm.
but when you see what's happening in the world, and now even more so because of the pandemic and because of crazy election stuff and everything that, the stress and anxiety is up and people are suffering, that just drives me even more. That's like, no, Remy, you got to stay on it, because what you're creating, people need it.
Oh, absolutely. There's a huge need for it. There's like in the next 3 to 5 years, the biggest need will be tailored information. So
Mhm.
you're so on it. I'm so on it in terms of I also have tailored newsletters and tailored information. So there people like us is like a must
Yeah.
because we get information, we either dilute it, we diffuse it, whatever, and then we give it into, like you say, chewable bites for people.
Mhm.
And in the realm of mental health, in this area that you're in, that's massive.
It's massive,
It's
and
massive. So it's just really a matter of time. It's a matter
it's
of
just time.
time,
Mhm.
you
And that's
know.
how I have to look at it. It's just time, and it's okay. It's okay if it's going slower than, you know, I want it to go. And you have to remember, I'm, 10 steps ahead and I operate at a certain speed.
Hmm.
And so that's been an adjustment with the ADHD
Yeah.
part, where I have to manage my own expectations,
Hmm. Absolutely.
because they're a little maybe unrealistic at time with the reality.
For most people, but they're not realistic. They're not unrealistic for you because you're a forward thinker and a visionary,
Mhm.
which
Right.
is which is
I just
awesome.
like to go fast and we're going slow and it just doesn't feel right. Right.
Yeah. But I love the fact that well, in your story you mentioned that you knew or you got diagnosed at 37 and then with the anxiety a couple years before, but then the doctor said you should be happy because a woman had just been diagnosed at 65.
Yes.
I was like, whoa, and it's so true that it's still the perfect time, it's still the perfect moment, and you're in the perfect industry, for who you are as a person and what your superpower is, and it really is a matter of time, right?
Right.
So I love that. And what I know that, I mean, you and I can talk forever, but what is one thing that you want to let the next generation know about the reality of life, really, and how the real business world works, because you're really in it, right?
Mhm.
And what do you want them to know after they read this story?
So, from a business perspective, especially the entrepreneurial portion of it, is that everything takes longer and costs more money than you realize. And so just know that up front. But also that you need to get really clear on what your why is,
Mm,
right? And you have to do it from a place of love and passion. And because that passion and love is what's going to get you through the tough days. Like, I don't do this like I'm a capitalist. I want to make a lot of money, but that's not my why,
mhm,
right? For me, I'm coming from a place of I truly want to help people. I want to help people not suffer because there's a lot of suffering going on.
yeah.
And and I want to help people just be better people,
Mhm,
right? And have more happiness and increase the resilience and help them be more productive and have better relationships, not only with themselves but with their loved ones. So you got to really figure out what that why is and stick to it,
mm,
and figure it out and really come from a place of passion. And then with the story, what do I want people to take away from this? I want people to know that a diagnosis or getting diagnosed, you shouldn't be afraid to go get diagnosed
mhm,
in and reach out for help. Like, don't be afraid to ask for help. And because when you can ask for help, then that's where you're putting yourself out there, you're being vulnerable, and letting go, will help you create that emotional freedom for you.
mhm,
But it like there's not Like nobody can make you feel ashamed for something that you're good about,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like now I'm coming at people like I talk to, my teammates, or if I'm in a relationship dating someone, I'll be like, "Hey, I want to let you know this is what I have, right? And this is how it may show up." And so it just, like, that's empowering, right? And it also helps
Yes.
the other person understand, and it keeps them from being frustrated or whatever. But
Yeah.
a diagnosis is a good thing. It's empowering.
I remember reading that in here where when you meet someone new, or somebody that you're about to work with, and you mention, hey, by the way, this is what's going on, and this is how it shows up. I love that, because it's almost like you're taking the power back.
Mm-hmm.
Just taking you're making a statement and saying, hey, this thing isn't going to control me. I'm going to take charge of it. It's not going to be in charge of me.
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly. And when you take on yourself and do the work, do your inner work, and inner work is continuous, right? There's so much joy and happiness and peace available to you
Mm-hmm.
more often, and you get to a point where you actually live in this state,
Mm-hmm.
and who doesn't want that?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you were to compare your life, 10 years ago, with all how you describe it, like this mind, chatter and chaos, and then now, like, how does it feel now in your head? Like, how is it? I'm trying to understand, like, this difference.
Yeah, it's peaceful. And you have to understand, for me, peaceful is, okay, I'm not going 1,000 miles an hour, but I'm going 100, right? I mean, that's who I am. I thrive on it. It's energy for me, right?
Right.
But it's peaceful for me. But the bigger piece of it is that I am happy. I am joyous. I don't feel shame anymore. I don't feel frustration. I don't allow it. I'm not going to say I don't get frustrated, right? And I have to deal with it every day, but it's not taking me out
Mm-hmm.
more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I'm a calmer person. Like I tell people, and they'll be like, "Oh, I would never have even guessed." Where people before would be like, "Hey, what's going on with you? You're all over the place. You're
Right.
scattered. You're blah
Right.
blah blah," right? And and so I just show up as a calmer, more peaceful person, and as a result of that, I have joy and happiness and peace that I on a level that's undescribable, compared to what it was before.
Wow, that's so powerful. That's so powerful. So how can someone get diagnosed, or how does that work, in case somebody is kind of like resonating with your story, and they're like, okay, it's time for me to go? Because I never got diagnosed for like anxiety or anything like that, because from that moment I had a couple of episodes, but right now, when you're sharing this with me, I'm like, oh, I've never been like diagnosed,
Mhm.
but I can guarantee you that there's something like that going on.
Sure. And by the way, anxiety is highly treatable,
Hmm.
and people don't realize that. And I'm not going to knock medication, because look, it did help me, but you don't have to be on it every day for the rest of your life. You
Hmm.
don't.
Yeah.
It's highly treatable, and I believe the statistic is that only 30% of people actually get treated.
Yeah, I've never been treated for it. I know
Mhm.
that, I struggle with it. So that's why I've done like my heart math breathing techniques, and that I did it and used the techniques myself. Then I got certified in it, and that's what I teach. But like, in terms of like what you're talking about, which is like, go get diagnosed and don't feel shame about it, like that opens my for me personally, that opens me up to, oh yeah, maybe I should go, you know.
Yeah. So with ADHD, typically a doctor, or there's a really great online resource, an online magazine called Attitude
Mhm.
Magazine, ADD, not, you spell it attitude, but ADD, ITUDE, instead of ATT. Um, they have some tests there that you can take, but you have to, in order to get obviously any type of medication, you would have to get diagnosed by the doctor.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that it may be, oh, you're saying that you've had this since you were young. Do people like in mid-age, because does it happen like after your 30s maybe for some people, or is it just something that you're born with? Like, you said something about trauma, right? So what if you have a traumatic experience like in your 40s and then...
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, and I'm going to go research and find out.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm really curious about it because now, with the pandemic and all the craziness that's going on, I could see that there's a lot of people that just even losing your job, people lost their jobs, they lost their homes and all these things. Those things are really traumatic.
Right, right. So, that's a great question. I'm going to go ask one of the therapists that we work with.
Yeah. So, all right. So what do you want to leave our audience with? But before you answer that, I want to thank you for being part of the Latinas 100. I'm super excited that I get to be published with you. And
thank you for doing it.
I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that you're participating. So what do you want to leave our viewers with?
Do your inner work. Do your inner work. There's so much available for you on the other side of it. And it will open you up to so much joy and happiness, but also just opportunities. And awesome. I can't stress that enough.
Can people go on your webpage and find the micro learning videos, or is that still?
So you have to subscribe. Right now we're in beta testing mode. So if anybody wanted to subscribe and test and give feedback, but they can request a demo. You can message me direct at Remy Meraz on my social handles. Happy to.
What is I was really curious because I wanted to test beta test with you. So
yeah, I'll send you a link, a registration link.
Awesome. So then I register and then I just give feedback based on all of the micro learning and.
Yeah, so you get to use the platform and then you give us feedback and it helps us shape the product better, the features, the content that we're producing. But yeah, I would love for you to be a user.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll reach out to you. And then also on the link below for anybody that's watching, I'll have all of her information below. And if this conversation is something that you resonate with, I highly recommend that, you reach out to her and find out more about her. And then also become a beta user tester, right?
So, yeah, just become a user. Yeah, happy to.
Absolutely. Well,
we need as many users as possible. So bring it on.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. And I will talk to everybody soon. Thank you so much, Remy, for hanging out with me.
Thank you.